Welcome to the latest edition of Russia Unmasked from the Center for Russian Studies in Kyiv. In this series, we challenge the propaganda published by the Kremlin against Ukraine and share with you Ukrainian perspectives. My name is Tony Meehan, and I'm based in London. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine has been going on for more than 1,370 days, with an estimated of 1.2 million Russians dead or wounded. It is very rare for Putin or his associates to use truth as a weapon. Today is one of those rare days, and it's not a particularly good truth for Ukraine. In three separate statements, Putin, Lavrov, and Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov have committed Russia to continue its war of violence and aggression against Ukraine and its negative impact on the West, particularly the economic stability of the West. London's Telegraph newspaper carried a headline and report recently that said, Putin, Russia will fight until the last Ukrainian dies. Therefore, Russian president insisted Ukraine must surrender territory, claiming his army is practically impossible to hold back. Tell me what's happened in the last 3.5 years. Some people demand to keep on fighting until the last Ukrainian dies, the Russian leader said. Oh well, you've lost 1.1 million plus, so let's see how it goes. He said also that the latest peace proposal negotiated with Ukraine and its European allies could form the basis for future agreements, but then dismissed Ukraine's leadership as being illegitimate, saying it was senseless to sign any arrangements with them because he didn't recognize Zelensky. So therefore, his words suggest that the Kremlin is unwilling to depart from its maximist demands, including demands for Kyiv to relinquish the entire Donbas region, and that is Putin's most desired prize. And it's one which he can then turn around to his own people and say that we have won, we are successful, etc., etc. And he's also, by the way, I should add, looking for Crimea. So he doesn't intend to end this war empty-handed. So who do you believe? The latest from Putin and his propaganda puppets. Putin said also that after the Alaska summit, a list of 28 possible peace provisions emerged, and some of the items had been discussed even before the Russian-American talks. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because it's supposed to be brand new and everything, and it's supposed to be an American plan and everything, so interesting. He claimed that after negotiations took place in Geneva between the American delegation and the Ukrainian delegation and other sides, they decided that all these 28 points should be divided into 4 separate compartments, and this had been conveyed to the Kremlin. For the sake of clarity, this is lies, propaganda. The Geneva meetings rejected the Russian proposed 28-point plan. I call it the Russian proposed plan because that's what it was, even though it had a United States badge on it. And anyway, the Europeans and Ukraine in Geneva produced a new 10-point plan, which is the basis of any further future going. Prior to this anyway, Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow would not agree to the updated US peace plan. So we are talking about the document coming out of Geneva as the updated US plan, and they've already immediately rejected it. Because if it takes Russia's demands into account, significantly less than the original version. Now this means Russia's demands in the original version were written by Russia, as we've previously said. So therefore, reality check. The 28-point US peace plan was written by the Kremlin. Reality check. Lavrov confirms the original 28-point plan was written by the Kremlin. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Ryabkov said the Russian Federation has no intention of making concessions in its war against Ukraine, even as it has expressed support for the peace efforts of the US document. So you can see the conflict coming, can't you? I think his statement is primed to create confusion. It confirms Russia continues to reject the expansion of NATO and vetoes and prohibits Ukraine from joining NATO, although it is an independent state and has the right to decide its own future. According to Russia, it does not have that right. One has to remember Putin's other puppet, Hungary's Orban, will block its application at every opportunity. Putin is ready to fight until the last Ukrainian dies. If Ukrainian forces leave the territories they hold, then we will stop the combat operations. If you believe that, then you're not living in the real world. He goes on to say, if they don't, then we will achieve it by military means. Another propaganda play by Vladimir is to promise your enemy success, encourage dialogue, exchange in return for your objectives on your terms. One has to ask the question, is Putin controlling the US strategy in this matter? Does the US know who it's working for? Ukraine, its allies, or the Russians? We don't know. For 3 years, US leaders and representatives have consistently failed to understand or accept the core facts of the war between Russia and Ukraine. As Zelensky has said more than 100 times, Ukraine is not Russian, nor wants to be part of Russia. It is different, it is Ukrainian. Russia invaded Ukraine, not the other way around. Ukraine has and will continue to stand firm. Ukraine has and continues to defend its sovereignty against the invader, Russia. Ukraine will not surrender and will decide its own future. Ukraine does not accept or compromise to Russian demands. Ukraine is grateful, welcomes and appreciates the financial and military aid it has received from the United States, the European Union, NATO, and many other states in defense of its homeland. The United States, the European Union, or any other party has no authority to negotiate any peace plan without Ukraine's participation and agreement. The Russian aggression against Ukraine is nothing more than a test, a forerunner for the potential of something greater later. Russians wanted to elicit the responses from NATO, Europe, United States, the West, to determine the responses against military action that they took against Ukraine to see what might happen in the future. This is not a one-off event. A number of deeper observations for your consideration. To get its European allies to buy into the 28-point Russian plan, even though they call it the US plan, the United States Army Secretary Dan Driscoll, during a visit to Ukraine, handed over the 28-point agreement, and told European diplomats that it's possible of a missile threat from Russia extending beyond Ukraine. So in order to avoid that, let's sign up to this document. Now you have to understand, which you do understand, that this document bears no resemblance to any fairness to Ukraine or even considers Ukraine's interests. It is purely a document to achieve a perceived peace which would not last more than a whisker. You don't attempt to pressure allies into buying the Kremlin draft peace plan knowing what they know that you are doing, and that's the naivety of the Americans. The next chapter, also American, Secretary of State Marco Rubio told US-European allies the United States wants to conclude a peace agreement before agreeing to security guarantees. Forgive me for saying so, but this approach is as though it's a Manhattan property deal. While the US, Europe and the West is attempting to negotiate a peace deal with the master manipulator Vladimir Putin, you have just informed him his biggest threat, the United States of America, will not agree to security guarantees until a peace agreement has reached. One, if not the most important clause in any peace agreement with the Russians is stating security guarantees. The second is, if you, Mr. Putin, break this agreement, this is what the response will be. No, we're not going to do that until we've got a peace agreement. Moving on, he said, and another unreal world situation, let me share with you a different propaganda story. This involves Viktor Orbán. I know he's a regular feature in these editions and these episodes, but this time Viktor Orbán, the member of NATO, the member of the European Union, is going to Moscow to negotiate with Vladimir Putin, independently of either of those organizations, on a range of different matters. The argument being that it is a sovereign foreign policy, so therefore it doesn't matter what he's agreed to in EU, it doesn't matter what he's agreed to in NATO. Moscow will negotiate with Hungary independently of both of those organizations. In a video address on Facebook, as reported by European Pravda, the Hungarian foreign minister has attempted to defend the latest trip by saying that it is sovereign foreign policy. Many do not understand the meeting between Hungarian Prime Minister and Kremlin ruler, and many try to misunderstand or misinterpret it. I don't think we do. I think we just say it as it is. I would like to say just one thing. Hungary is a sovereign country, just like Ukraine is a sovereign country, and that didn't stop it from being invaded by Russia, did it? No. Hungary has a sovereign foreign policy, just like Ukraine, but it was not allowed because Moscow didn't approve. This is a foreign policy based on national interests, a foreign policy in which decisions are made according to national interests. Why are you a member of NATO? Why are you a member of the EU? And why are you blocking the admission and the application of Ukraine to both organizations? So he goes on to say he's interested in ensuring that this cooperation with Russia continues to be based on mutual respect. Of course it is. Everything's based on mutual respect with Putin, as long as he's got you by the throat. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz criticized Orban for his visit to Putin, saying he travels without European mandate and consultations. European Pravda reported that a Hungarian journalist discovered, quote unquote, discovered Viktor Orban's travel arrangements and also the agenda for his meetings with Vladimir Putin and his entourage of officials. Discovers, by the way, for those of you who may not be familiar, is another word for leaked information. To be very clear, there is no way in any country that this level of information would be leaked. It would be placed in the hands of the selected journalists to capitalize on it and to make the best of it as they could. The same journalists also gained access to the agenda and the issues to be discussed and formed the meeting arranged a long time ago, isn't it? Reality check. Journalists do not access information by chance. There is a hidden political agenda approved by Putin. Putin is letting the world know that Orban is his man. I think we knew that already. Orban is telling his people how important he is. Orban is telling NATO and EU, don't mess with me, I have bigger friends than you. He is also confirming where his allegiances lie, and those are very clearly with Moscow. He is telling the US president, I play both ends against the middle. Remember, he was in Washington quite recently and had a very successful meeting with the president there. The main purpose of the visit, according to the media, is to discuss energy matters, particularly following the US decision to grant Hungary a one-year exemption from sanctions on Russian oil and gas. Interesting, isn't it? And so it goes on. Nuclear issues will also be raised as Westinghouse joins Russian-designed Pax nuclear plant as a fuel supplier. I didn't know that until that, but that's good to know. Another key topic for the Hungary-Russia talks will be the potential acquisition by Hungary's MOL oil company of Gazprom's stake in the Serbian company NIS, which could help MOL avoid the impact of US sanctions. Orban will frame his Moscow mission as a stepping stone towards reviving the short-lived idea of a Budapest meeting summit with Trump and Putin. Well, let's close with a few thoughts and a few words from the Frontline in Ukraine. While Ukrainian officials fought for changes to the US president's 28-point peace plan, NBC the American television station, news station, spoke with soldiers in the country's military who expressed frustration with the idea that Moscow would be handed its demands, but also hoped that they might soon be able to return to their lives. Quote unquote, "It is not a plan, it is a real capitulation." This is reference to the Trump, or shall we say the Russian, peace plan. There is nothing to discuss here. This is said by Volodymyr, a senior sergeant in the army, and he's under pressure from Russian forces for some 18 months now. He was an entrepreneur before the war, and he said serving 4 years on the front lines since the Kremlin's full-scale invasion has destroyed his health. If there is peace, he would focus on the recovery and his two sons. But he said he would want a clear explanation from the military leadership about why Ukraine's army should abandon its position that it still holds. Good point, Vladimir. Let's close with Putin's opening statement. Russia will fight until the last Ukrainian dies. Please share this podcast with your friends and those who you think will be interested. The online address is YouTube, Russia Unmasked. We'll be back with more news from Kyiv soon. Until then, Slav Ukrainian. Ukrainians were, are, and always will be here. Volodymyr Zelensky. Thank you.